The raven came at dawn when the frost still held the stone of Winterfell like a second mortar, and the breath of the kennels smoked in a white ribbon across the yard. It struck the maester's tower in a knot of wet feathers and claw, skidding along the sill, and pecked at the glass until the old man's hands found the latch. Snow hissed against the panes. The bird shook itself in a cascade of ice and dropped a ribbon of black wax onto the desk. Jon watched the maester's lips move in that soft way old men had when they were thinking through their teeth. He had stood because he never learned the habit of sitting when words might cut. Standing made it easier to take a blow. Ghost pressed his weight against Jon's thigh, half unseen in the drift of the chamber, red eyes steady as coals. On the other side of the table, Sansa had the stillness she used when she feared something and would not show it. Arya sprawled in a chair like a cat on a windowsill, bored, a hand spinning the point of a dagger between her fingers as if it were merely a splinter she was teasing out of the table. "A black wax," the maester murmured, "old in the south, but rare in the north. A message of claim and heat." His eyebrows, small pale wings, rose together. "From the sea, from White Harbor, my lord." Jon took the strip of vellum. The wax smelled sharp and faintly of resin. The writing beneath had a hand he did not know. The words were uncoiled, deliberate. "In the name of his grace, Aegon of houses Targaryen and Stark, first of his name, dragon and wolf, blood of old Valyria, the loyal and true do return. We come beneath wings and sail to set the rightful crown upon the rightful head. We bring fire, and with us the memory of oaths." "Whose grace?" Sansa asked, cool as a winter blade. "Whose crown?" "Mine, if this is true," Jon said. Arya stopped the dagger. "If," she said, and the word had a smile held somewhere inside it. The maester dulled his mouth with more words. "White Harbor has always been the throat of the north. What passes its quay passes into our veins. But dragons," he pressed his fingers together. "When a letter speaks of fire, one should warm the room." Sansa looked at Jon in a way that measured him, not as brother. He was that and something else too, but as a man the weather would mark differently from her. "If dragons have come," she said, "then the world has turned another time on its broken axle, and we must decide whether to step off or hold fast." "I'll ride to White Harbor," Jon said. "If this is a trap, better I spring it than have it creak open under the whole north." "Take men you trust," Sansa replied, "and take a word you trust. The north bent once and it paid for bending. It will not bend for fire unless the fire warms and does not burn." "I'm not asking the north to bend," Jon said. "You never do," Arya said, and there was something like pride in it, and something like a warning. "I'll come." "No," Sansa said at the same moment Jon did. Arya rolled her eyes, but she didn't argue. That was how it had come to be between them. The argument was alive underneath everything, and they loved each other on top of it like snow loves a field. They rode at noon when the day had brightened just enough to show what it was not going to be. The road to White Harbor was a thread through white. The birches stood like rib bones beneath the sky. Ghost trotted ahead, fading and returning, a pale stitch unpicking itself from the world and then finding the seam again. Davos met them at the 3rd mile with his cloak furred at the collar and a scar of wind across his cheek. "I had the same raven," he said without greeting. "The same wax. It smells like tar and a promise. I knew a smell like that once on Stepstone's piers when pirates talked of kings with empty purses." "How many men?" Jon asked. "Enough to make any harbor master go sober," Davos said. "Not raiders. I've the feel for raiders. These are ships that can afford to sleep. Tall ships. And the birds that came ahead of them were frightened of something that flew above them. There's a ripple in the talk of the docks. Rich men who have never looked up are looking up now." They reached White Harbor at sunset, and the world put on its old red cloak and pretended to be warmer for it. The Manderleys sent out a boat with a lantern trembling on its prow, a small star, and took them in under the teeth of the outer wall. Fishmongers were stamping their feet. The gulls wheeled and cursed like old women. It smelled of salt and rope and money. Wyman Manderley had his chair brought to the quay because it cost him breath to climb stairs. He held his weight with dignity. He had never asked another man to lift him unless that man owed him. "Your Grace," he wheezed when Jon dismounted. The full throat of the harbor froze at the words and then slowly went on moving, the way a sleeping dog will flick an ear and not wake because the sound is familiar after all. "I should not use a title I cannot keep safe, but if I had to put a coin on a head tonight, I'd put it on yours." "Don't," Jon said gently. "You'll find no crown in my hands." Wyman moved a hand. The rings looked like little boats adrift on fat oceans. "You may have none in your hands, but there may be one in your blood. And there are men in this world who find blood more bankable than iron. Look." Masts stood beyond the ice like a grove of black spikes. There were many, their tops scraped by gulls. Between them, the harbor made a mirror of the failing light, and across that mirror a shadow moved. It moved as a fish moved, but there was no fin, only a long, sleek body and a ripple of something that might have been a wing. Jon's breath lost its order for a moment. Ghosts snarled without sound, only the shape of a snarl, and all the dogs on the quay went quiet, as if the animal part inside them had received a command it remembered from a life they did not lead. The shadow rose. It rose slowly with the patient sea of a mountain, remembering that it could stand straighter if it wished. The air throbbed, not with sound yet, but with the sense that a sound was about to begin. Then the sound came, and it was not a roar at first. It was a register the ear did not know how to write down. Men ducked, not because they were in danger, but because it is the habit of men to bow when something greater decides to be seen. The dragon banked over the harbor. Its scales held the last of the sun, as if it had tucked light beneath each plate for later. Not black like a pitch night, not green like the summer sea, but a deep wine red that turned to violet where the muscles worked. Its wings were not sails. They were the reason sails had ever been dreamt of. It cast a trembling city of darkness across the water, and when it cried, the sound went into the ribs of the ships and made them speak in their ropes. On the lead galley, beneath that shadow, came a banner. Red field, black dragon, three-headed, crowned with a thin circle of white. It was not the house banner men knew. The white circle had teeth upon its inner edge and a soft line of leaves upon its outer. A crown that looked half made of bone and half of a summer's bower. "A wreath," Davos muttered. "Or a snare. Or both," Jon said. "They came ashore with the tide, with the way the tide has of making men obey without knowing they obey." The first of the Loyalists' war coats cut to the weather but stitched with a kind of patience that said they were used to people watching them arrive. Their leader had hair the color of ironwood bark and eyes like old ice. He climbed the gangplank as if he had done it 1,000 times, and when he reached the stone he bent one knee so precisely that none of the watching Northmen could call it fawning and none could call it arrogance. "My lord," he said, and his voice had a compass in it, points to places Jon had never seen. "We come as we said. We come with oaths. We come to put them where they belong. I am Baelor Celtigar, by the grace of the storm and the law, Lord of Claw Isle and Master of Coin, once to a king who never sat his chair. I have kept 3 books in my life, one for my house, one for my king, and one for my sins. I come to balance the third with the second." Davos made a small sound in his throat. Jon recognized it. It was the sound the sea makes when it remembers a name. "I thought the Celtigars were pearls and debt," Davos said softly, "and old coats kept in cedar until they wept." "We are that," Baelor said. "We are also the kind of men who carry a scale under our tongue. If it bites, we bleed truth. I have seen my share of false coins. I have never seen a better minted claim than yours, my Lord Jon Snow, or, if I may, Aegon Targaryen, born of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar, hidden in a crypt of snow and songs." Jon's first thought was of a passageway beneath Winterfell, cold dead air and the smell of stone. His father's voice not answering because the dead do not speak the living's names. His second thought was that some things, when spoken aloud, placed themselves in the room like a new piece of furniture. Men had to walk around them now. "I will not wear a name to make men kneel," Jon said. "I will wear a name if it keeps men safe." "Then it will fit you," Baelor said. He nodded at the sky. The dragon, as if called to lesson, folded itself into the wind and dropped nearer. White Harbor stones went pale in its shadow. "This is Vaylis," Baylor said. "She burned 3 of my accounts when I cheated time and made time pay interest. I would not lie with her looking at me. We hatched her where the sea breaths go hot beneath Dragonstone. We have 2 more Lord Stark, a bronze called Hearth and a pale gray called Ashes. They are young, but young is quicker than old when the air is cold. We have riders, and more who cannot yet ride but can speak the wind's language. And we have a purpose." "What purpose?" Jon asked, though he knew. "To set a crown where it belongs," Baylor said. "Half gold, half winter, if that is how you shape it. The old banners have gathered their moths in myriad halls. They will come to fire if the fire is steady." Sansa had stepped forward. She did it in a way that made men look at her. The dragons had taught her something about shadows. She moved inside them now, used them like stairs. "Our people burned for a southern crown," she said, her voice traveling without any hurry and reaching everyone it needed to. "They burned for a king who promised them food and honor. Promises turned to ash. If you bring a crown, Baylor of Claw Isle, you will not set it on a head without setting bread in ovens and peace on roads. We are done being beautiful in other men's stories." Baylor bowed slightly, and it was the first honest bow Jon had seen him make. "Lady of Winterfell," he said, "when the accounts are closed, the only beauty worth anything is the kind a full belly recognizes. We come with coin and ships and dragons, but we come to be told where to build and whom to feed, if you will have us. We will share the ledger." Arya slid up beside Jon. "I like him," she said. "He talks like a knife that knows it's sharp. He talks like a man who smells blood," Jon said. "That too," Arya agreed. "So do the wolves. It just means the world is honest for a moment." They made a hall of the Merman's court as the night fell. Men ate standing. The dragon, Vaylis, coiled like a braided river on the outer quay, her head cocked beneath the snow that melted and hissed along her snout. Children who had never feared much and grown men who had forgotten the shape of childhood both found reasons to pass the door and look out. And when they looked out, they felt small in a way that cured and caused many things in them at once. Baylor's people flowed through the hall with a practiced economy. There was a woman with hair white as frost and a ring set into her cheek that glinted like a tiny moon. Miriel of Volantis, a priest's. S of R'hllor with a smile she had been careful with. There was a dark man with hands like ropes, Kezan of the Dornish Sands, who had ridden couriers across deserts and laughed at men who feared to be thirsty. There was a boy barely old enough to carry a sword, brown-eyed and watchful, who never put his back to a door. Tommen Waters, a name that slipped and slid but never fell. There were sailors and pickpockets and men who looked like jewels and women who looked like knives. "Where are the others?" Jon asked in a small moment when the hall's noise lowered to a murmur. "Others," Baylor echoed. "The ones who held to your house," Jon said. "The houses who swore the old oaths. Valerion, Massey, Celtigar. Even Hightower wore a polite face once and kept a farthing for dragons. Who else? And the Golden Company. The mummers who sell iron for a living?" Baylor snorted. "They will sell to any who will make their banners quite enough. We did not bring them. We brought something better. We brought memory. Valerion sails south to keep their old pearl bright in Driftmark's ring. Massey prays to debts. Hightower lights lanterns for whichever moths are richest. Some will come later when it costs them less to be brave. Some will wait until there are songs to be sung and swear they wrote them. That is the way of men who keep their hands clean by never cooking." "And you brought dragons," Davos said. "We brought 3, Baylor said. 3 wolves may fell a bull where 1 will be gored. It is enough if they are placed well." "Placed where?" Sansa asked because she had begun thinking like a map. Baylor's gaze flicked up and then down. "1 in the north," he said. "1 at sea. 1 wherever men think the world cannot change." Jon felt the weight of that. He could name places like that. Old Town, where Hightower's shadows fell across books that thought themselves suns. The Eyrie, which believed itself a cloud and not a rock. King's Landing, which drunk itself into forgetting it was on a hill and not a throne. And there was the Dreadfort's ghost, though the Boltons were gone, and there were new places made of the absence of old ones. "You want to crown me?" Jon said in that quiet that sometimes became the only honest part of a conversation. Baelor did not flinch from the plainness. "Yes. Where?" Jon asked, not because the fact of it was open to debate in him, but because the shape of it could be changed. "In the Gods' Wood," Sansa said before Baelor could, and Jon felt a small flare of gratitude that was old and clean. "If you must do a southern thing, do it under northern trees." She looked at Baelor. "You spoke of crowns half gold and half winter. I know how to make that with words, but the North is older than words. It knows how to make the look of a thing into its truth. We will crown him beneath leaves older than dragons. They will call him king, and the gods will call him boy, and both will be true. That is how you knit a people to a person." Baelor regarded her again with that measuring that seemed not unkind. "You will be the arm of this crown," he said. "A king without an arm is a prayer waiting to be punished." "I will be myself," Sansa said. "That should be enough." It took 3 days to bring Winterfell into readiness for the weight of a new purpose. Word ran far and fast in the north, and returned like a sound striking a cliff. Old houses sent their best words and their worst men. There were always a few of those, and order needs them. Manderly's cooks arrived in a caravan of smoke. The Karstarks sent hard faces without smiles and 3 barrels of salt beef, as if to say that meat and duty were the same thing. The Umbers sent noise that walked like men. Deepwood sent women with arms like oars and laughter that told the truth and then told it again for those who needed to hear it twice. Arya slipped through all of it the way water finds a path when a man is not looking. She hunted the silence in corners. She found Baelor talking quietly to Miriel in a language she did not know at first and then recognized as one she had heard once in Bravos when the masks were being hung up at dawn. She listened without listening. She smiled without showing teeth. She was happy in a way that meant she was dangerous if anyone tried to make her happier than she wanted to be. Davos took the measure of the ships. He walked the wharves and put his hand on with the way a man puts a palm to a horse's flank to tell whether it likes the bit. He complimented the coil of rope where it was done well. He swore softly at the splice that would hold only until a storm remembered it. Sailors know sailors across a dozen tongues and 100 lies. By the second day, he knew which captains would hold a line and which would run before a shadow if the shadow muttered their father's name. He found Kezan smoking a twist of something that smelled like warm sap and told him where in the narrow sea one could hide a fleet inside a cloud. Ghost watched the dragons with a forbearing curiosity like that of an old wolf giving a pack of unruly pups their foolishness to spend. Valys let children touch the edge of her wing when she was in the mood for it. Hearth preferred the quiet of the Upper Bailey, where the wind came in clean and the sun lay heavy on the stones. Ashes, fickle and shy, like the kennels, for reasons that put terror into the kennelmaster's heart and a strange, affronted dignity into the old hounds, who insisted on sleeping with their backs to the dragon and their noses tucked in under their tails, as if both were a kind of statement. The gods would made its own weather when they stepped within its fence. Snow muffled itself and fell as if it had learned manners. The weirwood watched, and the thing inside the weirwood watched, and Jon did not know if either approved. The heart tree's face was not like any face he had ever seen. It was a sum of faces. His father's patience, his mother's absence, the old gods and Ifrins, and his own longing for a voice that would tell him what to do that did not come from his own chest. Sansa put her hand to the bark. She had learned to say prayers without saying them. Arya stood with her blade like a point of punctuation that would appear if any sentence tried to make itself about something other than what it was about. Bran came last, in his chair, the ravens finding the tree as if called down by an old habit of branch and wing. He looked at Jon and then through him. Jon had become accustomed to that. Love can live where eyes do not meet anymore. Baelor stood at the edge of the pool. He had washed. His hair lay flat. He held no crown. Jon had expected one because men like Baelor liked to have things to lift in place. But Baelor had brought nothing to put on anyone's head. Jon felt the smallest relief and the smallest lack. The first crown was leaf and wind and fear, Baylor said quietly, voice for the trees. The second crowns were iron and words and rents collected by men who could count to more than 10. We have had both kinds. Let us see if there is a third. He reached into his coat and brought out a thing wrapped in wool. He unwound it and held a ring of black steel, thin and unadorned, not much thicker than a man's thumb. It had a seam fine as a hair. The seam had the faint glitter of a metal that had once been liquid in a hotter place than houses liked to think of. Jon had seen steel that looked like that only once. Longclaw's edge when the forge's mouth was breathing like a bellows in a fever. The ring was not a crown the South would recognize. It looked like the band a cooper would drive onto a barrel to make it hold beer without shame. It was found in a vault in Dragonstone that had no door, Baylor said. That is not a riddle. It had no door because the island itself was the door. Men carried it out in a story about a tunnel and a tide. When the story was done, the ring was in my ship. Perhaps it is from Valyria. Perhaps it is from a smith who told lies about places he had never seen. It does not matter. It is a circle, and circles remind men of the things they forget they know. Which is? Sansa asked because she always brought talk back to the granary. That the end and the beginning meet, Baylor said. And that what holds them together is not pretty, but it is strong. He offered it. Jon did not take it. He held his hand out and let the ring be placed upon his palm. It was not heavy. It was warm even in that air. He looked at the weirwood. The face did not change. He looked at Bran. Bran's eyes were in 3 places, none of them here. He looked at Sansa. Her gaze was clear. He looked at Arya. She nodded once. A motion like a blade eased back into a sheath. Do it? Davos murmured, the way a man urges a ship to take the wind. Jon set the ring on his brow and found it sat just above his hair like an idea he could forget if he wished. He knelt because a man who will be knelt to must know how to do it. He pushed his hands into the snow at the foot of the tree until his knuckles burned and then numbed. He closed his eyes and felt small. He said nothing. The gods were not a tavern where a man shouted for ale. They were a field a man lay down in and waited for the frost to right itself around him and call that writing a benediction. The sound came first, the beating of wings. Valys passed low over the godswood, and her shadow fell across Jon's bent head, and the leaves hissed with heat and then stilled because the dragon did not breathe fire. Hearth came next and perched with a crack of a branch on the outer wall, tail coiling, eyes bright as coins. Ashes slipped in pale along the path and curled herself beside the pool like a smoked ribbon. Men cried out and quieted. Some fell to their knees because habit and fear require similar postures. Some stood because the North is country of men who save their kneeling for when it counts. Rise, Sansa said, and Jon did. He stood with snow on his gloves and the ring on his brow and his name like a door he could push open or leave shut. Baylor took in a breath as if a ledger's line had balanced. By blood and oath, by north and fire, I name the king this land has made for itself, he said. Not because I can, but because I can see what it already is. The shouting rose and fell, a tide, with gaps in it where men thought of wolves and winter and what it costs to keep a thing when other men want it. The dragons lifted and wheeled, the light on their wings like wine poured and caught again. It was done. Later there was wine and the warm, greasy comfort of meat and the business of making a new thing live like an old thing that had proved itself. Men came with voice pinned to purpose. The Karstark elder spoke of roads that could bear wagons in thaw without swallowing them. The Umbers argued for more salt in the cellars because dragons or no dragons, meat goes bad faster than songs say. Manderly promised ships and sealed it with a pie so dense Arya declared it a weapon. The women of Deepwood made a list of nails and rope that would actually build a fleet. Davos counted men and named storms and what months to fear what seas. Baylor answered questions about coin with numbers that did not lie. Jon listened. He spoke when he had to. He put his finger on the map and said not where to march but where to harvest hay. He asked a smith from Barrowton whether the old barrow iron could be smelted hotter if a dragon breathed on the bloom. The smith said the dragon could ruin a forge as quickly as make one, and Jon liked him for not trying to make dragons do the work of men. When the hall emptied, Sansa came to him and did not sit. She rarely sat when they spoke. She always held herself at some deliberate angle to him, as if the room had a subtle slope she was resisting. "They will call you Aegon," she said. "Some of them already do." "I do not care what they call me," Jon said. "Only what they ask me to be." "And what will you be?" Her voice was very even. "The North sets its back against the world, Jon. Dragons turn the world. You must find a place where the turning doesn't pitch our houses off their foundations. You must be a hinge." "A hinge breaks under the right weight," Jon said. "A good one doesn't," Sansa returned. "It groans. It lasts. It remembers what it's made of." She looked at the ring on his brow. "We have to choose the south." He tasted the sentence. It was bitter and right. "Old Town will sneer," he said. "Hightower thinks time is something it invented. King's Landing will pretend not to see us until their ships smell dragon. The Vale is 3 kinds of vanity wrapped in a rock," Sansa said. "The Riverlands will come because they are tired, not because they are loyal. The Stormlands love a fight, but only if it wins. Dorne watches and does not blink until blinking becomes a weapon. The Reach will count. The Crownlands will try to be what their name says they are and fail. The Iron Islands will be themselves, which is a misery and a utility." She ticked them off like seed in a palm. "We do not need them all. We need a corridor to the sea that is ours, and a belt of land that can feed us without waiting for Reachmen to decide if they prefer us hungry." "White Harbor," Jon said, "and the Neck, and Moat Cailin, and the Trident's gray skin, and 3 marriages," Sansa said. He blinked. "Not yours," she added, a small mercy she allowed him because she was not cruel, "though that too may come. I mean the old marriage, the kind that makes houses lay down swords with their hands still on the hilts. One in the Vale to make the Eyrie look down and see a friend. One in the Riverlands to set that country's bones again. One in the Stormlands or the Reach to make the weather blow in our favor." "You mean alliances. Names for rope," Sansa said. "We will tie the North to places where dragons alone cannot reach. The dragons are a ladder. They let us see. They do not keep us from falling if we step wrong." He wanted to say he was tired. He said instead, "Who?" She smiled at last, a small not unlovely thing. "We'll see who wants bread more than pride." Word spread faster than even ravens like to think it could. There are roads that human feet wear, and there are roads that rumors cut like ice. In King's Landing men laughed, then looked up, then stopped laughing. In the Reach lords sent gardeners to listen and wives to write long letters to friends they had never met. In the Vale Lisa's ghost shivered in a corridor and no one admitted they had felt the draft. In Old Town the Hightower lit 3 extra lamps not because it was dark but because it wanted to look like it had expected this. An envoy came from the Riverlands, old Edmure with his boy's eyes dulled into a careful middle age. He brought bread and a story about how fat geese can be if they are allowed to live a little longer. Sansa liked him. Arya did not pretend to. They made peace by agreeing that geese were fools and should be eaten before they learned to be anything else. A rider came from the Vale, long-legged and proud, and passed Jon and Sansa both to look at Bran. "Lord of Winterfell," he said to the boy who was not a boy, "the Eyrie sends you a message from a man who thinks he is a hawk. He says you should show him your dragons, and then perhaps he will show you his oats." Bran stared at him until he went away. From the south there came no envoys, but there did come fire. A hamlet at the edge of the Neck burned in a line that made a letter when seen from above. The letter was a threat spelled in firelight. Baelor studied it from the ramparts as Vales turned slow circles and spread panic among the crows. "Lannister?" Davos asked. "Name has a sound," Baelor said. "This looks like sellers. Men who are paid to do a thing that hurts and does not last. But the letter is clever. Pretends to be a word it is not. It wants us to look in the wrong direction and spend our anger like fool's coin. They want us to take the dragons south. To leave the North in winter's hands and wolves as an afterthought." "We won't," Jon said. "No," Baelor agreed. We will make them come north, to a place where money is a language they do not speak well. They did not raid. They did something worse. They built. The sound of hammers began to spread like a drumbeat through the north. Steady, alive, patient enough to be terrifying. Men came to Winterfell to look and to be told where to go. They left with rope over their shoulders and advice between their teeth like nails. Dragons cast shade over new walls, not to threaten but to warn the wind to behave. Sansa drew a ledger that was not coin but mouths. She balanced it with fields and fish and the kind of luck she cultivated by making men think they had decided the thing she had decided for them. She sent girls who could count to barns where men could not and gave those girls the right to insult anyone who lied to them. She named a word for stealing when it was done by someone with a coat of arms. Then she found a different word that let the same men save face while returning what they had quietly relocated to their own pouches. Arya made the shadows behave. Men who came to lie or steal lost interest in the attempt. There was a whisper that the king's sister could walk into any tent and be the man who owned it and come away with his memory of his mother and his plan for his treachery. The whisper wasn't true, exactly, but truth went to sleep early in those nights, and fear kept watch instead. Davos taught boys to look at the sky and read weather, not apology. He put ships into the water and took them out and put them back in until the carpenters stopped taking it as an insult and started taking it as a challenge. He walked with Kezan and named the currents at the mouth of the White Knife and made them friends. He found a place to hide a fleet inside a fog and then told the fog to come when called by lighting fires in a pattern that wind would carry out and back. Baelor counted. He counted barrels and clouts and the days between a man's pride and his hunger. He sent letters not to lords but to clerks, because clerks held pens in the way men who think they are important hold swords. He bought debts and then burned them in public in a brazier that Valis heated with a polite exhale. The people cheered not because they understood what had been freed, but because something had been released that had sat on their chests so long they thought it was their ribs. Jon visited the forges. He took off the ring when the heat made it slick and wiped his brow with his forearm. He lifted a hammer and made the sound it loves to make when a man who has used one before picks it up again. The smiths liked him for not pretending he knew everything and for knowing enough to lift his shoulder with the blow. He asked about chain and plate and pikes and the way leather can be taught to stand like a thin wall if you speak to it with oil and patience. Could a dragon's breath weld stone? He asked an old mason who had lived long enough to lose most of his teeth and none of his temper. It could break stone, the man said. It could glass it if you're greedy. Could do many things it shouldn't do. But a wall is made of the way stones sit together, not of heat. A dragon can scare the wind into wanting to go around a wall. But a wall that keeps a man's mind in the fight is better than a wall that makes him watch the sky so hard he doesn't see the ground. Jon nodded. He liked men who saved his time by telling him what not to do. Winter did what it always did, it settled. It made everything quieter and louder at once. Tracks wrote themselves in the snow. Fires meant more. Bread was a kind of royalty. The dragons adapted sooner than men. They learned to warm their own bellies without burning their beds. Valis put her head into the great hall one evening and made the rafters groan with the truth that would has. I am a tree in a new shape, and the storm returns to argue with me. Ghost began to sleep against Jon's door again. He had stopped for a time when the world had felt too large to guard. Now that the world had grown larger, he remembered that the best thing to do with a thing that will not fit in your teeth is to lie beside it and breathe with it until it learns your rhythm. The first southern host came in the second month of the new year, its banners a bleaching of summer colors against the clean blue of a true cold morning. They were not Lannisters. They were Sellswords with a lion sewn where a purse's strings show. They came to test the place where the north now met itself. Jon did not show them all three dragons. He showed them a wall of shields and the tips of pikes and hearth silhouette passing twice, only twice, across the sky. Men have an arithmetic they do without thinking. If there is one, there may be more. If there is more, we did not bring enough water. They retreated after skirmishing, not panicked, not spent, simply rethinking their invoice. They will come again, Davos said. They will come smarter, Sansa said. They will come heavier, Baelor said. Let them come, Arya said, and went to oil her blade. 3 ravens that night. One from Old Town, all courtesy and a paragraph of words that said nothing and a line that said, "If you wish to be heard, send a voice worth hearing." One from the Vale, which said only, "What is your price for leaving us alone?" One from a place no raven should know how to go, Bravos. Written on a parchment that seemed to have learned to be secretive and signed only with a small, precise symbol, a faceless man's coin. Jon slept poorly and dreamed of a road that led both north and south and had no middle. He woke with the taste of ash and apples in his mouth. He went to the Godswood and found Bran there with his eyes full of 1,000 pre-dawns. "You will have to go south," Bran said before Jon spoke. "Not because the south matters more than here, because the south has a kind of fire you must carry north to make this last." "What fire?" Jon asked. "The kind men believe in because they can touch it," Bran said. "Words, papers, the parts of the world that pretend they are not pretending. The thing you hate, you will have to learn to be good at it, not because it is noble, but because it works on men who would ignore nobler things." Jon laughed once without humor. "So I will be king in the Godswood and clerk in the capital." Bran's mouth moved in something like a smile that had been taught not to show itself all at once. "You will be a man everywhere. That is harder." They chose their south on a clear day for the sake of omens. Jon would ride to the Trident with hearth above and 2,000 men below, enough to look serious and not enough to look like a man who thought he could take the world by force. Baelor would go to sea with Valis, to make White Harbor's mouth a promise and not a threat. Ashes would remain, an ember with wings to keep Winterfell and the snow. Sansa would hold the north with ledger and law and the plain fact of her presence. Arya would be exactly where no one expected and then, when it mattered, exactly where she was needed. Davos clasped Jon's arm. "The river knows how to be honest," he said. "It goes where it can. It does not apologize. Let the Trident teach us more than the men on its banks do." Sansa stood close and straightened the ring on his brow. She did it as if it were a collar on a hound about to be shown to a room full of men who thought themselves too important for dogs. "Remember," she said softly, "we are not asking them to love us. We are offering them a future in which their sons do not die stupidly. That sells." Arya hugged him without warning, which was her way of reminding him how their childhood had not been. "Be boring when you can," she told him. "It disarms men who are waiting to be dazzled." He rode. The north fell away behind him not as a thing abandoned, but as a thing that held his cloak with its teeth and reminded him where he was from. Hearth flew once each morning and once at dusk. A pattern causes calm. Men in villages came out to stare and then to sell, because wonder is easier to bear when it pays for itself. Jon bought cheeses and apples and bread and the kind of story old men tell when they want you to know they remember a time when kings walked and did not make dust any cleaner than the dust made itself. At the forks he found Edmure waiting with a flagon and not enough men to be insulting. The river sang. It made everything else seem to be speaking too loudly. "King," Edmure said, tasting the word as if it were a new beer he did not yet trust. "I suppose it is better than the last one. The last many." "I do not intend to be better," Jon said. "I intend to be different." "Good," Edmure said. "Better is a lie old cooks tell about stale bread. Different will do." They spoke of tithes and tanners and the stretch of road between Riverrun and the coast where men had begun to disappear in a way that left no bodies, which meant someone was either careful or hungry enough to be neat. Jon sent 12 good men and 1 better woman to find the neatness and undo it. He spent the afternoon listening to a cobbler talk about leather, which turned into a talk about how men stand, which turned into a talk about war that was worth more than half the speeches he heard that week. Hearth breathed fire once, far from any house, a long line of flame so that men could talk about it and put the truth among the lies. Davos had taught Jon the cost of a rumor. It was often less than a bolt of cloth and paid a better return. At the Trident's middle crossing, men in cloaks that had seen better coat of arms wore the manner of officials who thought the world existed so long as they noticed it. They asked to see papers. Jon produced a letter from the Merman's court. a writ from Riverrun sealed with wax that had not been held over a hearth and had the smell of real sun in it. He produced nothing with a southern king's hand because there was no southern king, and because there was no such thing as a southern king that would write Jon Snow safe conduct across a river he could ford anywhere he pleased. Hearth's shadow passed. Papers took on the quality of prayers and were returned more quickly than they had been asked for. South, Jon felt the country change the way a man feels a woman turn in sleep. There were more hedges and fewer stones. The air had a sweetness to it that he did not trust. He saw a field of wheat standing through snow like a stubborn drinker holding his tankard above the brawl. He saw boys learning to fence with sticks and missing the point of what a stick is for. He saw a procession of 7 men carrying a bier and a priestess of the Red God watching from an alley with a smile like a closed book on her mouth. It was not all counsel and olive branches. Twice riders tested his flanks. Once a night attack cut 2 men from their horses and left their blood on the ice where it froze into a red blossom. Men made a point of stepping around in the morning. Jon ordered hearth grounded. He ordered fires in a tight circle and no talk after moonrise. Wolves came and sat at the edge of the firelight. Ghost went out to speak to them and came back smelling of an agreement. At a wayhouse outside Harroway, Jon found a man with quick hands and honest eyes selling news. He paid him with food, not coin, because he trusted men more when their bellies owed him. "The Reach is buying winter," the man said, mouth full. "They're buying it in bolts and spoons. Anything that looks like it will see cold through gladly. They'll sell us straw with advice sewn into it," Davos said when he heard. "We will buy some. We will not buy the advice." They turned east, then south again, avoiding roads that had too much memory in them. Hearth flew only at dusk now. Men slept better when the big thing overhead had a timetable. Jon learned to talk to mayors and to milkmaids with the same attention and to leave both thinking that if they needed something specific they could send a boy north and get it. Word came from White Harbor by a rider who had learned to change horses so cleanly, he left no breath behind him at the relay. Valys had chased a long ship with a painted eye as far as Skagos and burned it to the waterline when it kept going. The ship had not flown a lion. It had flown no flag at all. That told Jon as much as he needed. Pirates had a way of being rented out by men who wanted to pretend they did not deal with pirates. Another word came from Winterfell, a different shape than the first, less urgent and more important. Sansa had unearthed a ledger kept by a steward who had died 3 kings ago, and in it a list of shipments to the south that had never been paid for. She had written a letter to Oldtown that made polite mention of the ledger, and of what the North might do to remember its debts if the South liked to remember them so keenly. Oldtown had replied with an apology that sounded like a man trying to tell his wife he had never met the woman in the garden. They sent coin. Sansa bought seeds. If the world did not fall to pieces, there would be oats like a sea when the summer finally found its way home. Jon reached a town called High Heart where a hill remembered things men had forgotten. He climbed it without making a speech to himself. A small, bent woman with hair caught in 100 tangles watched him from the cairn where she had been waiting for the world to end and begin in the same afternoon. "King," she said, like a dog greeting a child. "You smell of cold iron and stubbornness." "I smell of travel," Jon said. "Same," she croaked. "You will make a choice that is not between fire and snow, but between the lie that feels right and the truth that sits wrong in a man's mouth. Chose the wrong comfort. It will keep you warmer." "I don't like riddles," he said. "They don't like you either," she said cheerfully, and went back to frowning at the horizon. He slept badly that night and dreamed of the crypts again. He walked past the stone lords with their stone swords and found not his father but a woman with gray eyes who did not speak and a man with a harp whose strings were the veins of his own wrist. When he woke, the ring had slipped to his cheek. He righted it. He did not tell anyone. They crossed into lands where Lannister coin had once made itself comfortable. They found a bridge with the middle planks removed and a note pinned to the post that said in careful script, "Toll." Davos gave the note back to the boy who held it and said mildly, "Son, a toll is a thing taken from men who have no choice. You have just made this into a choice. The wrong one." The boy thought quickly and offered to sell them the planks. Davos paid him, but with advice, and left the planks behind anyway. South of there they met resistance that had practiced. Men who had seen Hearth before and arranged their arrows accordingly. Jon put Hearth away and sent men into the hedges in twos to become small and clever. They took captains alive and offered them coin to count what they had seen when they returned to the men who sent them. The coin had wolves on one side and dragons on the other. Men like to talk more when the thing in their hand is pretty. A message waited in a boarded-up sept that had been made into a barracks and then abandoned when the rats complained about the manners of the latest tenants. It was short and it was honest. Come to the Blackwater. If you will be a king, be one with a river behind him and a city before him. Otherwise go home. Jon went. He went because if he did not, men would say he feared, and because if he did and died, the North would go on without him, and that too had to be possible. He camped 2 leagues out and watched the city's lights lick the sky like a cat's small, careful tongue. He smelled smoke that was not the sweet, fat smoke of winter food or the honest, sour smoke of a tanner's yard, but the complicated smoke of men's pride. He went in with 30 men and Davos and no dragon. He wore furs that said where he was from and a ring that said what he had chosen. He left his sword with Arya, which meant it was safer than on any rack. The guards at the mud gate wore the battered look of men who had been told they were the last thing between a tide and a drowning and refused to panic about it. "We have an appointment," Davos said mildly to the sergeant, who came out with a lantern held like a dare. "You have a shadow," the sergeant said, looking up at where Hearth might have been and finding only smoke and stars. He let them pass with the expression of a man who will perhaps write a story about this once he has learned how to spell. The Red Keep had a way of looking important because a hill is a good trick. Inside it smelled of oranges rubbed on old leather and of wax that had been warmed many times and never learned manners. The throne room had fewer chairs in it than it had once, because the city had learned that too many chairs make arguments worse. A council waited. A tall woman with a mouth that looked as if it could take leaves off a tree with its words. A thin man with spectacles and hands ink-stained. A knight with a look that said his knees ached and he had decided to be cheerful about it. A priest with the look of a man who had secretly learned to count. "King," said the woman. "Lady," Jon said, because he would not pretend he knew her name's weight yet. "I did not come to take your city. I came to talk about the parts of it you would give the rest of the realm if asked properly." "You intend to ask properly?" the spectacles man asked, with a certain delight in the possibility that politeness might save his city money. "I intend to ask in a way that keeps boys from dying for the sake of a word," Jon said. "What word?" the knight asked. "Mine," Jon said. It went on and it went sideways and it went nowhere for a time. Men brought papers and set them down and moved them and felt better for having moved them. The priest talked about unity the way a farmer talks about rain in a year without clouds. The woman said nothing for a long time and then asked, "What will you do when your dragons break and your winter ends?" "I will still be from the north," Jon said, and she nodded as if that was the first useful sentence she'd heard in a week. They drew a line on a map. It was not a border yet. It was a possibility. It curved where the land asked it to. It respected rivers and ignored fiefs. It was a good line because it was a little ugly. Pretty lines cause wars. They wrote a letter to Old Town that did not ask permission but asked for a list of truths everyone could stand to believe at once. The spectacles man enjoyed that. He loved truths that were written down. He looked at Jon and saw a problem his pen might one day solve, and thus a friend. That night, Jon stood on a balcony and looked at the city that had sucked the marrow from many bones and learned nothing from it. Hearth circled somewhere out in the dark. A habit. A reassurance offered by a creature that did not truly understand the concept. Davos came to stand beside him, and they shared the quiet like a coin. "Will this hold?" Jon asked. "For a while," Davos said. "Most things do if men want them to. And if they don't, then we will make something else," Davos said. It would be a very poor world if this was the only try it got. They left the next morning with papers and the absence of papers both. The city watched them go with the suspicious relief of a man whose tooth has stopped aching and is afraid to bite again. On the road north, Jon looked east and saw the sea like iron beaten thin by a patient god. He thought of Valleys above it and Baelor counting tons of grain, as if they were small battles won. Midway home, a rider came through the ranks like a needle through cloth. He had no breath for greetings. He had only a word, Skagos, and then a second, burning. They turned. They turned as a flock turns because the leading edges felt the wind change and the bodies followed. At White Harbor, they found smoke on the horizon, not from a city but from a sea turned to a kiln. Valleys hovered, casting her vast shadow over the labor of men with buckets who had the look of those who already knew their work was a story they would tell later to make themselves forgive what they had not managed. Pirates, yes, and something else. Men hired to be more than pirates, with courage rented for a night and burned for a price. They had meant to cut White Harbor's throat as if it were a sheep. Davos saw how they had angled their ships to make the fire run with the tide. He saw where they had misjudged the current by a hair, and how that hair had saved a district. He saw where the dragons had been kept from burning the city in saving it. Baelor met them on the quay, his coat black with water, his hair singed at the edge, his account of the day short and unembellished. "We saved the ships," he said. "We lost the long pier. We made them pay. We may have taught them something. I hope not too much." Jon put his hand to Baelor's shoulder because men like Baelor forgot sometimes that they had bodies and those bodies tired. Baelor looked surprised and then not. Sansa's letter came the next day by a girl whose braids were tied with blue cloth and whose mare was more ribs than horse. The letter said 3 things in a few lines. Winterfell stands. The grain holds. They tried the Dreadfort Road and found it a ghost. I am building a bridge where the river decided to change its mind. It is the only way to make the neck honest. Also, she added as if an afterthought, Ashes has learned a new trick with her smoke that keeps men from coughing in the forges. Come home when you can. Do not hurry what you cannot. He slept then because men who want to make good choices must admit they have bodies that need sleep. He dreamed of a white field and a black circle. He dreamed of a woman who did not speak and a harp. He dreamed of the ring on his brow heavy as a thought he might not be ready to think. He woke to Ghost's nose in his palm and the taste of salt. Home again, Winterfell rose from the snow with a new set to its shoulders. Buildings were not proud, but they could be content. He felt it in the gates. He felt it in the yard where boys swung sticks and did not pretend they were swords, and thus learned more quickly to survive. He felt it in the kitchens where an old cook scolded a dragon for stealing a ham and the dragon shuffled backward with what might have been shame. Sansa took him out to see the bridge. The river had wandered here, lazy in summer, cruel in thaw. She was coaxing it into a more honest course with Rock and Will. Men cursed the work less than he expected because she had made them believe it was theirs somehow. He stood with her in the cold and watched a span go into place that would outlast both of them if men were lucky. "You did well," he said. "So did you," she said, and it was as if they were 2 smiths looking at a hinge. "Baelor will make me a king of paper soon," Jon said. "Old Town will anoint it with ink. King's Landing will deny it and then accept it and then pretend they accepted it first." "Good," Sansa said. "And then what?" He looked at the dragons. Valleys sleeping like a mountain that had learned to purr. Hearth preening in sun that had no warmth. Ashes slipping between stones like thought. He looked at Arya sparring with a woman who fought like laughter. Knives close to their hands as if trust were not something to be spoken of. He looked at Bran under the weirwood, whose eyes had ceased bothering to pretend they saw what he was looking at. "Then we feed people," Jon said. "Then we build roads. Then we make a law that says men who steal by writing their names on the theft lose their names. Then we get through a summer," Sansa said. "And when winter comes again, as it will, we will have stories about this time that make boys want to do the work and not just sing about it." He smiled. It was not a thing he did often because it felt like taking a hand off a hilt, but his hand had been on that hilt too long. "And if the songs come anyway?" "They will," Sansa said. "We will endure them." In the months that followed, messengers became more important than swordsmen for a while, and that was a kind of miracle. The veil blinked and found it could see the north and not feel threatened. The riverlands sent wood and wine, and Jon sent back salt fish and men who knew how to stack it so it would arrive as food and not as a lesson. Old Town wrote down a list of kings and left a space. Then someone, somewhere in some room, filled that space with a hand that did not shake. A woman in the Reach married a man from White Harbor who had strong arms and a way with numbers. Their wedding feast served beets in 3 different dishes and nobody complained. Dorne wrote nothing and said everything by teaching their children the names of wolves as if they were stars. There were battles. There were always battles. A Lannister cousin no one had heard of tried to make himself a duke of something and failed with the proper amount of noise. The Ironborn burnt a town and paid for it with 3 ships and a modest apology that still stank of fish. Men died. There is no king so good he can command otherwise. But fewer died for stupid reasons, and that is a kind of crown men can live beneath. Once, in a thaw that broke the ice without breaking the cold, a dragon egg cracked in a kiln in Winterfell where no egg had any business being. The smith who found it did not know whether to kneel or run or laugh. He did none of those and instead brought it to Sansa, who looked at it, then at ashes, then at Jon. "We are not a house of dragon lords," she said. "We are a house of people who do the work in front of them. Put it back where it can be warm without being worshipped." They did, and it slept, and perhaps one day it would choose. Perhaps not. That is a better way for the world to be. Years later, men would say the crown was born in a godswood and tempered in a harbor and proved on a river. They would say the king was a quiet one who did not love words but learned them, and did not love power but used it as a man uses a tool he finds in a shed he did not know he owned. They would say his sister kept his accounts, and his other sister kept his enemies honest, and his friend kept the sea from mischief, and a southern man with northern eyes kept the dragons from becoming gods. They would say many things, most of them true enough to warm a winter afternoon. On a night when the wind was a story told by a very old woman to a very stubborn fire, Jon went alone to the godswood. He left the ring on the table and Ghost at the door. He stood beneath the face and did not ask it for anything. He thought of his father's silence and his mother's absence and the way a harp sounds when a man who can play it chooses not to. Snow fell on his hair and melted and ran along his temple as if the cold had found in him a warm place to become something else. He said a name aloud that was neither Stark nor Targaryen. He said it quietly, in the way a man addresses a truth that has lived inside him so long it thinks itself furniture. The trees did not answer, and the dragons did not stir, and the castle did not shift, and the world did not crack. That was the miracle. The world did not need to crack. It only needed to hold. And because it held, men learned the shape of their days again, and found the work in them. And in finding the work, they found that crowns are lighter when many hands are on the strap. In the spring that lasted, a boy who had learned to count by weighing turnips stood on a new bridge and watched a dragon's shadow move across a river that had decided to be honest. He did not run. He lifted his face and squinted, and then went back to carrying a bag of nails to his father, who was making a hinge. The hinge would hold a gate whose only boast would be that it hung straight. And in that, more than any proclamation, was a kingdom. In that, more than any fire, was a crown. And in that quietness, winter after winter, life decided to be something men could carry without breaking. And the North, which had learned the worst kinds of patience, learned a new one. The patience of peace, which is harder, which is longer, which asks a man to be as brave as he is when he takes up a sword when he sets it down. The thaw came on cats' feet, not with trumpets. It made a black lace along the edges of drifts and set little rivers to mutter beneath the ice, shy as gossip. Fences leaned. Roofs let go of their burdens in heavy sighs that startled the ravens and pleased no one. The yard under Winterfell's eastern wall turned to a broth of soil and straw that sucked at boots and taught boys the old truth that standing is a skill and not a gift. Jon went with a small guard to the neck when the ice began to move. He went because the neck is a hinge too, a damp one that complains when you make it carry weight it does not fancy. He rode as far as men can ride, and then walked as far as a horse can be persuaded to pretend it is a boat, and then let the marsh have his boots while a gray, light-footed man in reeds led him along paths that were not there until you stepped on them. Ghost disliked the neck and loved it at once. He grew very quiet. He placed his paws with attention. He watched the water as if it might reach up and speak. Howland Reed received Jon as if he had been expecting him since before the first reed stood up and called itself by that name. He was a small man as ever, and younger at a glance than his years, and older in the way of men who have made a habit of being exactly where the world forgets to look. His hall was a room made of walls that had learned to float. His table a plank that had learned to tell men when they were eating too loudly. The smell inside was green and a little sweet and a little snake, and the light was what the neck allows. Careful, very precise, as if every glow were counted. "You found me," Howland said, without smiles or tiresome riddles. "I followed where you had left places to step," Jon answered, and that seemed to please the man more than smiles would have. They spoke of bridges and causeways and where a dragon's breath would only make a fog into a mirror. They spoke of oaths that had been sworn by men who had died without telling their sons the words, and how to remind a country of a promise by building something useful over it. Howland held Jon's eyes when Lynna's name passed through the room. He did not say it aloud. The water said it in small lappings against wood. As if language were a habit it had not wholly forgotten. "I will show you where the old stones lie," Howland said at last. "The water keeps secrets because it is greedy. If you give it something better, it will give some back. A road is a better secret than a rock." They went out in boats that were planks and felt like arguments. Ashes followed overhead with an undragon-like patience, her pale hide faint against the low sky. She drifted as if she had remembered fogs before she had ever flown, and the bog accepted her as another piece of the weather. Howland pointed. There, a spine of stone beneath a skin of peat. There, a place where pines could be taught to stand in rows that would be a wall in 10 years. There, a path that geese took that men could learn if they decided they were as clever as geese. "Crannogmen will run messages on this water faster than any horse," Howland said, "if you ask with your mouth and not just your crown. We are poor in the way that makes us hard to steal Ram. Pay us with what we need and we will give you what cannot be hired." "What do you need?" Jon asked. "Salt and iron," Howland answered. "Salt because it is honest. Iron because it remembers its shape when you tell it to. And names. Names that hold. Names that stop men from renaming things you already know." He looked up at Ashes and did not flinch. "The neck has no fondness for dragons. We burned when your father's father's father flew his. We flooded and we waited and we outlived men who thought the air made them immortal. But I have fondness for wolves, and this dragon seems to have learned the wolf's trick of lying down when the house sleeps. I will teach your men where to put their feet. You will teach your dragons not to dry our marshes into kindling." Jon nodded. He did not waste words pretending to command a creature to be what it was not. "She will fly high and breathe seldom," he said. "And we will build without making the marsh angry." Howland showed him an island that moved and called itself home only when it settled, and a tree whose roots made halls like the ribs of a whaleman could speak beneath without their words wandering off and getting lost. He showed him where a causeway must stand and where it must kneel. He showed him the neck of the neck, that tightness where a country can be held if its hands are not shaking. Jon made a mark there on the map in his head and did not tell anyone where it was who did not need to know it. On the fourth day, a spear rose from the water a hand's breadth from the boat and then slid under again. No more hostile than a fish, but full of the kind of reminder that keeps kings mortal. Howland smiled and did not call out. He lifted his hand and lowered it. Somewhere a boy lay down among reeds and decided not to try that joke again. Howland said, "This is a friendly place for men who are not fools. Teach your captains the distinction. The neck will not." When Jon left, Howland went with him as far as the edge of solid ground. He did a strange thing then. He placed his palm on Ghost's head and shut his eyes and spoke as if to a tree. Ghost tolerated it because Ghost had learned that some truths happen quietly to your fur when you are tired. "A wolf with a crown is no safer than a man with one," Howland said, stepping back. "But a wolf with a pack does not starve. Remember that." Back north, the bridge was more than a drawing in Sansa's ledger and less than a promise to the river. It was becoming itself, which is the most difficult thing a bridge ever does. Sansa met Jon with hair pinned, as if it were a map, and fingers stained with ink, and a mouth that had something else to say before anything tender. "The Vale has sent Lord Yohn Royce," she said. "His letter was written on good hide and worse patience. He is halfway between insult and courtship. If he arrives feeling more of either, we will lose what we need from him." "And what do we need?" Jon asked, falling into step, falling into the rhythm of her mind so they would not tread on each other's thoughts. "A promise to keep the Eyrie from becoming a nest of southern plots," Sansa said. His voice for a levy of stonecutters and soldiers who do not mind climbing. "Not because we want their men. Because we want the Vale to feel a piece of this weight, so they speak of it as theirs. And we need him to go home saying that the North did not become a barn with dragons sleeping in the hay." Royce came in silvered mail that had seen real weather and a cloak the color of high stone. He had the posture of a man who has won arguments with his back when his tongue failed. He looked at the walls, the work, the dragons, the wolves, and lastly at Sansa, and he bowed just enough to say he remembered a red-haired girl who had once climbed the Eyrie stairs with dreams like fragile glass. "My lady," he said. "My king." "Lord Royce," Sansa returned, and Jon did not mind that she took the first words. Royce liked that. Royce liked order. You could smell it on him like iron. They ate thick soup and hard bread and a pie that somehow tasted of summer. Royce approved of the food without speaking of it. He approved of the hall's warmth by relaxing one shoulder. He approved of the dragons by not mentioning them until the third cup. "If they are to fly the Vale," he said, "they will not scorch our mountain goats to bone and poetry. They will fly high," Jon said, repeating the promise he'd made to the neck and discovering that the same words served here because honesty is not clever but it travels. "They will not hunt your herds. We have men who will swear they saw otherwise, even when they did not," Royce said. "I will trust your word, but words are best when they have friends who are bricks." He set down his cup. "You want stonecutters, and men who can stand beside a drop without telling the sky a secret," Sansa added. Royce's mouth twitched in what counted in him for humor. "We can spare such men if you will send boys to learn how to pitch walls against weather that thinks itself clever. And if you'll take our steel when the time comes to set a garrison at Moat Cailin whose business is boring." "Boring is a skill," Jon said, recalling Arya's counsel. "We will make room for it." They made a pact that was not a marriage and not less binding. Royce stayed long enough to see real work done and left with a list of nails that pleased him more than oaths. He inspected hearth from a distance like a general may inspect a new kind of engine and did not bow his head when the dragon passed. Men noticed. That was good. The Vale would not be seen to bend. It would be seen to build. Winter's back broke with a soundless crack, the way a river breaks when the ice moves as one creature and then remembers it is in fact 1,000 pieces. The North opened its shutters. The smell of mud became a promise again instead of a curse. Wagons argued with ruts. Children shouted new, louder games with more stones in them. Dragons shed dull scales like coins no one needed to pick up and gained a layer of luster that made old sailors look up and say words they had not believed in for a long time. Sansa's bridge took weight. The first cart across was piled with sacks that sounded like wealth when men hit them with their hands. Seed. The next was lumber cut in the stubbled forests south of Last Hearth. A woman with a baby and the courage of bread under her belt walked behind the third and smiled in the way of someone who has crossed a river that used to choose who lived. Baelor came back from sea with a new notch in his ledgers where losses live. "A gale out of the south split a hull we did not name well enough," he said without poetry. "I told the winds a lie about how much we could carry. They find us. Paid. We will not tell that lie again." "And the Reach?" Jon asked. "Old Town." "They smile with their eyes shut," Baelor said. "They have written down our names and placed them where they write the names of those who owe them. Then they have pretended to forget they wrote the list. We must be dull about it. Dullness is the enemy of their kind of power." "They sent a book," Sansa added. She had put the volume on the table and weighted it with a stone because sometimes symbol is as useful as reading. "The book makes a very decent doorstop." Arya slipped in then like a correction. She had been south. This was a thing that happened now without being told, and she appeared with a new nick on the curve of her ear and a look like laughter that had not found anything to laugh at yet. The Lannister cousin with the new made-up title has fewer fingers, she said, and a new respect for doors. Also, the Black Cells have a rat problem that has learned to read. They sent it a letter and it ate it. A Septon told me this in exchange for a pair of boots. He's fond of shoes. He will walk to the Trident and tell the first man he meets the same story in hopes of getting a cloak. Good, Sansa said. Let stories do some of our lifting. What else? A boy with a barbed tongue in King's Landing writes songs about 3 dragons and a crown of iron, Arya said. They make people cry in alehouses. He thinks he is singing for the city. He is singing for us, though he does not know it. I put 4 copper in his cup and did not break his fingers. Mercy, Jon said. Strategy, Arya returned. Bran called Jon to the God's Wood at dusk and pointed with his eyes the way he did now. Ravens made the branches a set of black notes, and the wind read them. Old Town will send a man, Bran said. He will bring honeyed words and a bee inside them. Do not sweat the bee. Put it in a glass and let it spend itself. Jon waited 3 days and the man came on the 4th in good leather, with hands soft in the way of men who have never had to choose between work and hunger. He wore a chain with many links and apologized for its weight. Maester Vaelin, in service to those who serve the realm, he said. Which means, Sansa asked politely, that I speak for a place that would like to continue telling the realm what it is made of. He said, honest in a way that made men want to forget the honesty and forgive him. We have no use for kings who hate books. Forgive me, I do not say that you are such a king. I say only what we have learned the hard way. Jon kept his hands where Vaelin could see them and his ring where he could not see it. Books feed men, Jon said. Not directly. But if I have learned anything, it is that good ledgers are worth more than swords once the swords have been laid down. Tell Old Town we will read what we must and write down what must be true. Tell them we will not set fire to their lamps. Tell them they may keep their lists if they agree to come north and be bored once a year while we speak of roads. Vaelin smiled a little despite himself. Boredom is not our great enemy, my king. We tell ourselves it is, but fashion is. We cannot afford new truths every season. It becomes expensive. Then fashion the truth we have into a coat that keeps our people dry, Sansa said. Bring merchants who can count without cheating and send us boys who make good clerks before they make good liars. We will send back some of ours, and they will remind you that winter is not a story. Vaelin left with a belly full of stew and a head full of thoughts and a bee humming against the glass of his courtesy. He would sting where he could. He would buzz where he could not. That was his nature. It is well to know what to expect from bees. Summer took its first long breath. Men cut new holes in their belts and pretended it was because they had grown. Grain rose and made the fields look as if the land were smiling and the wind was running its palm over the grin. Children learned the smell of dragon without terror. Livestock learned it with a minimal amount. Vaelys mated the sky with herself in long curves that made old women forget to gossip. Hearth developed a fondness for a particular stump at the edge of the training yard and flattened it to a polite height each morning with a puff that delighted the boys. Ashes found the tunnels beneath the old walls and slept in the hot places where the castle remembers it is built over secret fires. The forges loved her for it. Edmure sent carpenters and a letter that contained a joke, so poor Davos kept it to tell again on cold nights. The Vale's men hammered with the precision of men who could die if they slipped. Deepwood's women grew brown with the satisfaction of work that shows its shape at day's end. Manderley's ledgers fattened without cruelty. Baelor stopped 3 more fleets with a combination of fog, mathematics, and the unpleasant surprise of having a dragon fly low enough to blow out their cook fires without lighting anything else. Pirates began to sing songs about the north that were not exactly flattering and therefore were exactly flattering. There were knives in the long GR. As always, a house in the Crownlands sold the same parcel to 2 different men and swore that dragons had eaten the map. Sansa made them refund both and pay a third cost in timber. A scribe tried to charge double for copying letters to the Vale. Arya borrowed his ink and wrote a notice about theft in a hand so neat it shamed him into honesty. Old Town printed a small treatise suggesting that 2 crowns could sit upon one head if the head were taught to balance. It was read, discussed, mocked in taverns, and then agreed to by men who had never set foot in a tavern. Once, late, Jon walked the wall alone and found Baelor there counting stars. "You will love this work," Baelor said without invitation, not praising, not flattering, simply saying a thing about stones and days. "You will hate it also. The hate will keep the love honest. If you ever become content, I will worry." "I am content now," Jon said, testing the word, not trusting it. "No," Baelor said. "You are glad of a good day. Contentment is a drug. It is sold best by men in cities to men in chairs. The North cannot afford it." Jon watched Ghost move along the yard's edge, a piece of moon that refused to obey the sky. He thought of the dream of the crypt and the name he had spoken there that belonged to neither house and both. He thought of Lynna's silence and Ned's. He thought of the weight of something that was neither sword nor crown but some third thing that happened where a man set down the first and refused the second and took up instead a tool that had no name yet. A messenger came from the Iron Islands with hair plaited like ropes and 3 rings in his ear, and a look like the sea after a storm that is thinking of mischief. His letter was salt-stained and short. It said, "We hear your dragons do not like the taste of fish. We will send them iron." "They want us to fight them at sea," Davos said, reading it over an onion. "Because they've nothing else. The right answer is to fight them by making their wives happy with roofs that do not leak. The second right answer is to burn 3 of their ships on a fogless noon, slowly, visibly, without killing anyone who doesn't insist." "Can we?" Jon asked. Baelor leaned over the map as if it might speak, as it sometimes nearly did. "We can do the second. The first requires a summer the Iron Men do not ruin and a market they cannot afford to ignore. Give them a place to sell other things than death, and they will come to us with baskets and apologies. Until then, make them spend coin on paint and new names for the same boats. Poor men with proud boats cannot keep a war on the water long. They did as much as sense would allow. Valys burned 3 ships on a day as bright as an oath and flew away. The Iron Men named 2 boats again and swore the third had been old and unworthy. An autumn later, a boy from Harlaw came to White Harbor with a wagon full of barrels of fish cured in a way that did not insult northern tongues. He asked what nails cost. Davos bought the barrels, and the boy learned how letters could be a kind of net that did not tangle. Bran's news shifted like the weather. A squall, a clearing, the steadying of a vast pressure no one could name. He spoke less now, which was not a change. He sat more with his hands quiet on the chair's arms and his mouth remembering the shapes of words it was not obliged to make. Jon checked on him without saying he was doing it. When he did, he found the raven's thick as thoughts in the branches, and once, startlingly, the great white shape of a weirwood flower on the grass beneath the tree where no petals had fallen. He did not pick it up. He left it to be rained on, as most important things are. When war came properly again, it came because men with older maps feel affronted by new roads. A reach lord of middling name and great certainty gathered a company out of old grudges and new vanity and marched north as far as the Blue Fork, taking 2 towns that had not been asked whether they wanted to be taken. His banners were green and gold, and his men wore herbed oil in their hair that baffled flies and enraged bees. He wrote a letter to Winterfell announcing his intention to free the Riverlands from northern scorn. Jon did not send a dragon. He sent letters. He sent Edmure new spears. He sent Deepwood's women with a lawyer and a wagon of bread. He sent a dozen of the Vale's stone-minded men to show the Riverlanders how to make a quick wall on bad ground and call it a thought. Then he went himself with a guard that did not look like an army. They met on a field where the grass grows without believing in cities. The Lord of Herbed Oil made a speech that climbed high and did not care where it put its feet. Jon listened and did not blame the man for thinking words could be stairs when he'd never been taught otherwise. When the speech was done, Jon asked if the man intended to keep his people fed through winter with pride. The man tried to answer with more steps. Jon stepped closer and said, "You are tired, and so am I. Let us pretend to be wise and call this a parley. I have bread. Men will do better for bread than for most principles." They ate, and the green and gold lord became less of a story and more of a man who complained just like northerners about the way leather splits when it dries too fast. Edmure told a joke about eels that failed again and made everyone friendly out of pity. In the end, they drew another ugly line on a map in the dirt with a stick. The lord left, not conquered, not exalted, a little less certain and a little more useful. There were losses, real ones. A barge overturned with 20 sacks of seed, and a boy who could count better than most men drowned because he would not let go of a ledger he thought he could save. A wall fell in a thaw and took 3 men with it, and their wives did not forgive the weather for the rest of their lives. Hearth scorched a barn in a sneeze of flame, and 4 calves died, and the old F. Armor who owned them wept like a priest at a pyre, and then wiped his face and brought Ashes a pail of water to rinse her mouth because her teeth had smoke on them, and he could not bear to see it. That is what a kingdom is. Losses refused and losses endured, and the odd moment of grace when a man does a thing to make the day bearable. Jon sat often at the forge with the men who knew how to speak to iron. He lifted the hammer enough not to be a joke, and not so much he was a nuisance. He listened. He asked why some blades sing and others mutter. He learned to hear the difference between a kettle's honesty and a pan's lie. One night, late, the old smith with no teeth pressed a strip of black steel into Jon's hand. "Ran out of crowns," he said, not looking at Jon. "Made this from the scrap of a broken plow. Plows make good kings better than swords do. Put it on the inside of that ring when it starts to bite. Men will say you found a way to make it sit. Men talk. Let the ring be the same, but with a bit of field in it." Jon took the strip and kept it in a little box for a week and decided it was either nonsense or the truest thing anyone had given him. He had the ring lined with it, a bit less, or else he believed it did, and that was enough. The year turned, and the river kept to the course Sansa had argued it into and paid little for the privilege. The bridge took carts and then carriages, and at last a bride from the Barrows to a ship at White Harbor, and made her mother weep in relief when the wheels did not sink. Songs were sung that did not make Jon want to leave the room. Ghost grew some gray along his muzzle and then threw it off again like a mood. Arya laughed in the yard with a woman whose face she had once worn and never would again, and their knives clicked in a phrase only they knew. Baelor went south and came back and went again and never stayed long enough for the place to put a chair around him. Davos found a boy with a gift for sailcloth and found him a sail, and the boy repaid him by not drowning. One evening when the dusk was the color of fresh bruises and the air held the bite of the coming cold like a joke told only to those who would laugh, Jon stood on the western parapet and heard wings cut the sky. He looked up, expecting one of the 3 he knew, and saw instead a shape that was none of them. Smaller, quick, with a hide like damp ash before a fire truly catches. It came from the north, from the very far places that do not care what men call them. It circled once, a scout's wisdom in its angle, and dropped low enough that Jon could see the crown of its head where, against all sense, a pattern in the scales made a ring like the smith's strip turned to skin. Ashes rose from her hot stones and claimed the air. Hearth left his stump and drew an arc that said he was not asleep after all. Vali's came last, heavy and certain, the wine of her hide dark as the first day's bruise. The newcomer churred and folded itself into their circle like a stray dog that has learned family is a thing you can sneak into if you don't ask. "Where did you come from?" Jon said into the dusk, and for a moment he fancied the dragon looked past him toward the godswood, as if to say that some doors open from both sides. He did not rush to name it. He did not rouse the hall and pour wine on the floor and declare a feast. He told the kennel master to find more bones. He told the smiths to check the hinges on the gates. He told Sansa, and she said, "We will hear where it has been when it decides to tell us," which is the right way with both dragons and men. Later, in the quiet between watch turns, Jon went to the crypt and walked where his footsteps wrote themselves in damp and were unreadable an hour later. He paused where he always did, at the place that was and was not his father. He touched stone and felt nothing and felt everything. He spoke the name again, the one that had no place on any ledger and all the place in him, and this time the speaking sat more easily in his mouth. He thought then that accuracy is not a thing for songs. It is a thing for hands. He would be accurate with his days. He would not promise more. When he came up, Ghost met him and sneezed, and the night felt warmer. A boy ran past on an errand that would have seemed petty to a king. A bucket to a woman who used every spare moment to scrub the steps because she had once been cold on those stones and would not be again if she could help it. Dragons slept. The forge glowed like a stubborn coal. The sky had learned again the trick of keeping its stars. He went inside and set the ring on the table because sometimes that is the best work a king can do. He slept. He dreamed nothing he could hold. In the morning there would be a list of nails, a man to decide about, a road to walk to see if it had kept the shape he gave it. There would be bread to taste and a story to listen to and a letter to return with more kindness than it deserved. There would be a wolf. There would be dragons. There would be winter later. There would be a bridge when it came. He would be a hinge until he broke, and he would make sure the door remembered how to move when he was gone.